This short webinar is a part of the Cycle of Freedom series and is titled No Interest in the Foundations of Freedom Equals No Freedom, and it just explores this topic a little more deeply with some additional information. Jay Leno said this when Iraq was writing a new constitution: "Why not give them ours? We're not using it," and how profound a thought that was. Cicero 2,000 years ago observed the same sentiments in his own society. He said this: "But our age, on the contrary, having received the Commonwealth as a finished picture of another century, but one already beginning to fade through the lapse of years, has not only neglected to renew the colors of the original painting, but has not even cared to preserve its general form and its prominent lineaments. They, the principles and virtues, have now become so obsolete and forgotten that they are not only not cultivated, but they're not even known. We have retained the name of a republic when we have long since lost the reality." Might those words to describe the United States of America today? Time magazine, Constitution on its cover. Does it still matter? Os Guinness says this: "If Americans today have no serious interest in the Founders' wisdom and provisions, what are their alternatives? If they have any, they should say so, and they should set out what they are, and how they relate to the issues behind the Founders' original discussion. That is, if we're going to abandon the Founders' wisdom, what new ideas and structures and principles are we going to put in place to guide our country toward the future?" But that's not the American people as we cultivate our life and society. The one thing Americans cannot do is trust naively that freedom will somehow endure forever, and do nothing or do the wrong thing in the effort to sustain it. Americans today are building a society with passion for all that's ephemeral, disposable, and throwaway, yet they still absurdly presume that prosperity and freedom will remain permanent. People still presume that their freedom will somehow last forever without a thought as to how. Free people are always free to give up freedom in exchange for security. However, they are not free to pretend they are as free as they were before. The elites cultivate this view. The elitist view of religion is that it's good for others but not needed in themselves. Voltaire scornfully dismissed religion for himself and his friends, though he advocated it for everyone else. He said, "I want my lawyer, my tailor, my servants, even my wife to believe in God, because it means that I shall be cheated and robbed and cuckolded less often." So in other words, he'd like other people to be full of faith and virtue so society remains stable while he lives however he wants. Well, the intellectual and opinion leaders in a country can destroy a country. No great country or civilization will endure if its intellectual leaders and opinion shapers are at odds with what made the country or civilization what it is, particularly in such a wholesale way. And that's what's taking place in the United States today and a lot of the Western Hemisphere. Os Guinness, a native of England, said Britain's slide from dominance to arrogance to complacency to decline and mediocrity, and now to a steady loss of freedom itself, which includes the lamentable erosions of freedom of conscience, freedom of speech, and the encroachments of a massive surveillance state, all came about because of the simple fact that at the height of its power, Britain did not look back and heed the lessons of history. It ignored history and repeated it. So if we ignore the principles of freedom, we cannot remain free. Abraham Lincoln, in a prophetic voice, says, "At what point, then, is the approach of danger to be expected? I answer, it if ever to reach us, it must spring up among us. It cannot come from abroad. If destruction be our lot, we must ourselves be its author and finisher. As a nation of free men, we must live through all time or die by suicide." Thus, Os Guinness's book title, "A Free People's Suicide," comes from Lincoln's prophetic words. So here we have it. If there's no interest in the foundations of freedom, that means there can be no freedom. This is something to think about. This is U.S. Civics Training. Thanks for listening.